Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the last video. That was for chapter 3. Now I am here in front of you on your computer screen or tablet to talk about very cool stuff about cost approaches to product pricing, and we will do great stuff over here. So I hope you had a great week, and as I said before, a couple of seconds ago, we're going to talk about the cost pricing and approaches, how to price the hospitality products and all that. And then we're going to talk about how to integrate those pricing for optimal revenue allocation. What I mean by saying that, as you know, revenue maximization is our #1 goal, and then we will learn different approaches to maximize the revenues in hospitality industries. For example, we're gonna do the price elasticity of demand. We will talk about a dollar per thousand approach, the bottom-up approach, room rate discounting, equivalent room occupancy, so on and so forth. We will do all these in this lecture, and then we will understand the importance of pricing, the factors affecting the pricing, and different understanding and a lot of different understanding related to pricing. And then we will talk about many engineering, not just room pricing for, let's say, hotels or cruise lines, but we will also talk about the F&B item pricing for beverages, for food items, for any F&B item, mostly food and beverage, of course, and for package items, like this, discounted menus or special menus and selected menus. We're going to talk about all these, and this will be our chapter. So this was the F&B menu item section, and then you can the first page of our lecture is always the lecture outline, so you can follow the lecture from here. Okay, so if you guys are ready, let's just get into details. Let's talk about what pricing is. Let's understand the dynamics of pricing. Let's discuss the importance of pricing for hospitality companies, and then we will be able to okay, right here, and then we will be able to do the calculations. Okay, guys, here. Optimal pricing. What is it? Optimal price is the price level that provides the maximized revenues. Okay. In other words, optimal price is the price that sets the most efficient value for the hospitality properties, while minimizing the cost. If you want, when we increase the prices or put in the optimal level, that brings the most revenues, most satisfactory revenues, okay? Most satisfactory return on investment, most satisfactory profit margins. Therefore, optimal pricing becomes very important because we will be able to tap into potentials, 100% potential, to generate more and more revenues and higher levels of profit margins. That's why hospitality companies should be very careful about setting the prices, and then it should be the decision makers must be able to deal with different pricing scenarios along with different discounting rates to find their optimal price. Okay. So hospitality industry experiencing several changes, guys. We know that because we are humans, we are a people's industry, and then we deal with people. There are a lot of factors that we have to think about when we deal with pricing for rooms, for example, or pricing for package guests, conference guests, group guests, business travelers, transient travelers, or even walking guests. Okay, hospitality industry is an industry that is affected by seasonality a lot. Why? Because we know that we have low seasons, we have okay seasons for a couple of months, couple of weeks, whatever. We have the peak season, for example, for resorts. Common sense, very easy. Everybody knows that for resorts, we have summertime in Central Florida, especially. We have the summertime for 6 to 7 months. Okay. Summer and summerish months, therefore that brings the the higher levels of revenues. Okay, seasonality is important because along with this seasonality, pricing strategies changes. Okay, not just seasonality, but also fluctuating levels of consumers in the local and national markets. Okay, consumer traffic, in other words, that we can put it. Seasonality, we talked about this. Location of the products. Are you close to a beach, for example? Is your property close to a beach, or they will have to take the shuttle, or they will have to take their cars to park and then walk to the beach? Okay, this stuff becomes important. Where are your amenities? Are your amenities covering the great the great products, for example, the quality of the products, okay? Or the amenities are close to the iconic places of the city. For example, for New York, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, City Center, the city, right? For Orlando, close to theme parks, Disney World over here, or the Universal, okay? Those kind of stuff, it becomes very important, along with the positioning as well. How do you position yourself? Like I said, products nearby, natural resources, events, festivals, games, stadiums, basketball stadiums, football stadiums, or the universities, or the great hospital area. If you're dealing with, let's say, spa tourism, or if you are running a spa resort in the region, in the city, or in any state. Consumer type, guys, this becomes very important here. Let me just highlight it, because when you understand your consumer type, their profile, their needs, their wants, their expectations, your pricing could be a little easier, because you will have to set the pricing based on their wants. For example, you know, I'm just going to compare New York City versus Orlando. New York City, in Manhattan, in any hotel, there you will see a tall building. You will see maybe 500 or 600 rooms. And usually those hotels, most of the hotels are business type of hotels. Almost all of the hotels, by the way, are business type of hotels. So based on the location, based on the pricing, based on the dynamics of the city, based on the cost of living in the city and all that, prices, ADRs or prices, or the room prices, even walk-in prices, could be around $400 or $500 in a great upscale hotel. But when we come to the to Orlando area, we have resorts over here, and $400 and $500, except for a couple of properties like Four Seasons, could be an outrageous number. So therefore, consumer type, understanding if they're willing to pay a certain amount of price for any product, any hospitality product, becomes vital in pricing decisions and in optimal pricing setting. So, guys, here's the thing. I would like to mention a couple of things before I show you some calculations. Setting the correct price for any hospitality product, as I just said, is vital. Okay, if the prices are too high, if prices are set too high, give me 1 second, please. I'm trying to organize this. Please give me 1 second. If the prices are too high, lower demand may result in lower levels of revenues. So setting a price at a higher level does not necessarily mean that as a decision maker, as a GM, as a director, you will be able to realize the higher profits or higher revenues. Therefore, we know by now we know that setting the prices at the highest level for a resort hotel in Orlando, for example, $1,000, right? So it doesn't make sense. You probably that property will realize lower demand. Therefore, the revenues will shrink. However, on the other side, if the prices are set too low, yes, you will probably have 100%, sometimes overflowing capacity, overflowing occupancy. You will have 100% occupancy, but that doesn't also mean that the revenues generated will be at the optimal level or will be at the highest level. Therefore, setting prices too high or setting prices too low doesn't necessarily mean that hospitality companies or hospitality establishments are going to realize the higher or maximize revenue levels, therefore the profit margins, therefore optimal pricing. Let's just go back to our lecture at the beginning. Optimal pricing becomes very, very important. As a decision maker, let's say rooms director or director of operations, you will have to find a price level that matches with the customer's need, along with the low competition in the market and the customer types, and along with the amenities, what they serve, what you have, and then they must be willing to pay the price so that you can generate the optimal levels of revenues, then the profit, and then the profit margins. Okay. Well, how are we going to do this, guys? There is no correct way of. There is no 100% correct, robust, straightforward way of establishing optimal prices. Okay. Trial and error sometimes works the best, or managerial experience, managerial background works the best. Okay, without dealing with any numerical approaches, without dealing with any specific tools or analysis. Okay, in order to find you as a decision maker, us as a decision maker, to find the optimal price, we will have to factor in different measurement, different analysis. Sometimes we might need to blend qualitative factors. We're going to talk about in this chapter. Sometimes we will have to blend the qualitative factors with the quantitative factors. Qualitative factors, non-numerical measurement system, such as surveys, such as trial and error. Okay. Quantitative factors are the factors that deals with the numbers, all right? And they do have specific tools and analysis and specific approach to find out optimal prices. Sometimes this part works the best, but sometimes this part works the best. If you ask me, and industry folks might probably be able to agree with me on that as well, that blending quantitative factors along with the qualitative factors are the best. Why? Because you're putting your intuition, your gut feelings, your experience, your background, the competition in the market, your customers' needs and wishes from the surveys, from the questionnaires, right? Along with the numerical values, you match those two distinctive approaches to find optimal price, and sometimes, most of the time, that works the best to find the optimal pricing. Guys, speaking of qualitative approaches, right here. Speaking of qualitative approaches, let's talk about this a little bit deeper. Okay, there are different type of qualitative approaches, but again, we know that they are just non-numerical tools, non-numerical measurement system when finding the optimal price. Okay, qualitative approaches simply are the non-quantitative, meaning non-numerical approaches. They come from the intrinsic values. They come from the instinct, from the gut feelings, along with the experience and the background, managerial background, that helps finding or setting the optimal prices. Okay, it ignores any quantitative factors. For example, cost structure, for example, forecasting, for example, budgeting, for example, customer traffic, for example, changing local dynamics in the area, for example, or micro stuff, for example, competition in the market, tourist arrivals, okay, tourism receipts, tax revenues generated by tourists in the local area. Sometimes qualitative factors most of the time ignores macro factors, for example, interest rates, okay? Or total number of visitors to the entire country, adjusted for every single state across the nation. Okay, so pricing with instinct is another name of right here. Let me just do this. Pricing with instinct, another name of qualitative factors. And let's just talk about different types of qualitative factors, and then we are gonna jump to the quantitative factors that are used for pricing. Okay. Excuse me. So does this work right here? My question. Qualitative factors? Absolutely. It does work a lot. Why? Because sometimes, as I said 5 minutes ago, sometimes you do need your experience. For example, imagine that I'm the general manager running a hotel, running the same hotel for 30 plus years, okay? About to retire. I know the local market very well. I know the competition very well. I know the products that are in the local market very well. I know the position of those products. I am very well aware of the surrounding areas of, that specific local area, and I know, of course, the new developments in the area, new stuff in the area, and the events in the area, festivals in the area. Okay, therefore, the consumer type is so clear for me. It's clear to me that I can use my managerial instinct or experience based on every single dynamics that I know that I experienced before for the past 30 years. And I can set the prices. Because sometimes quantitative approach tells you totally different pricing level for rooms, for F&B products, anything that you can think of, than the qualitative factors. Therefore, it does work absolutely, okay? Such as competition in the market right here. I can take a look at the competition in the market, like the shopping calls, I believe, secret calls, that I can just call the other properties to find out how much they are charging for a standard room, for example. Or if I can find the data, their weekly sales report, for example, okay? Their number of guests, their occupancy, by sending somebody, by calling them, or just simply networking with them. Therefore, competition in the market, okay, becomes very important. And by the way, you don't want to go, way above of your competition or way, less than your competition, because it will hurt your revenue levels as well. Because if you go above the competition, you're not going to find any customer to buy your products, rooms, F&B items. That's what I'm talking about mainly, okay? Because they do have a substitution. They can substitute you very well with the same quality of resort hotel, same quality of property, and then you will just lose the market share, by simply just putting the prices too high. You can put the prices too high. Four Seasons are the best example for that. You can put the prices too high, but again, you have to bring a very, very quality product, amenities, very quality environment, and your customer service, all that. You have to exceed their needs and wishes and wants in the property, so that you can put the price. You can jack up your prices to the roof, because customers are willing to buy that product. Specific group of customers are willing to buy that product. You are targeting those customers anyways. Okay, that should be the only case as a decision maker. If you want to put the prices so high, way above competition, that will be the only case actually. Okay. Again, if you want to put way less than what the competition tells you, yes, you might realize 100%, maybe 90-95% occupancy. However, it might backfire as well, such as decreasing revenues, or customers might question you. Hey, look, this is very low. The prices are so low. There must be something to it. There are a lot of psychological attributes in that pricing as well, from both sides. Both sides meaning decision maker, which is you, and the customers on the other hand. Okay. Manager's intuition, oh boy, that's very, very important, because intuition, along with the experience, intuition comes from the experience, from the managerial background, right? So it becomes very important, because it is the key for setting prices sometimes when the quantitative factors doesn't work, when forecasting or budgeting doesn't work, or doesn't tell you the reliable numbers that satisfy your pricing needs, okay? Trial and error. Trial and error is a heavily utilized concept in the industry, by the way, guys. Okay, mostly for the brand new properties, mostly for the new developments. Okay, they set a price, they try it to see how the customers are going to respond to that price, and then if they need to, they change it, they revise, modify the price, okay, to match with customer needs. Trial and error might be a great idea, and it might be the key sometimes when finding the optimal revenue levels and when finding the optimal profit margins due to the increased revenue levels, okay? Price cutting, it's the easiest way, okay? Price cutting, you're gonna cut the prices, okay? Let's say from $110 ADR to $95 ADR, 90. Price cutting, for example, F&B items, cut the prices. Put those items in selected menus, okay? Or just give a discount for every single customer that you can imagine. Group travelers, business travelers, or the conference travelers, okay? Or even, walk-ins for non-staying guests, but using your amenities. It's just the easy way. But again, you must be very careful as a decision maker when cutting the prices, because every single procedure, every single action that you take comes down to revenue levels. When you cut the price, or when you decide to cut the prices, please make sure that it doesn't come to a point where your revenues are hurting. That is exactly why we're going to learn all these procedures in this lecture, and then as a decision maker, you will be able to come up with a healthy decision, solid financial decision or operational decision to help your operation, okay? High price, charging more than competitors. We talked about this a little bit, right? Again, but you have to emphasize on the quality. For example, the quality of bedroom, right? Rooms, the carpet, the quality of concierge service, the quality of transportation, the quality of the food, the quality of the pool, spa area, recreational areas, conference areas, or the parking valet service. You can name it. Okay. Again, you can set the prices high, but again, you have to bring something to the table, something unique to the table for the customer's needs, so that customers are going to be aware that yes, I am paying this amount of money to this product. However, I am just getting an exceptional service, or I'm just getting an exceptional hospitality experience, staying experience, dining experience, or any other experience with the price. Okay, therefore, high prices, yes, it does work. Peak season, definitely it works. Okay. But you must be careful. Let me give you one more example about the highest prices. For example, if you're economy type of hotel, okay? I'm not talking about upscale hotel type of hotel or any great family resort. Let's just think about economy type of hotel. You have 90 to 110 rooms. Let's say 100 rooms, make it easier. You have 100 rooms, but you're very close by to a university. Okay, during the graduation times, during the football season, these are realities, guys. Okay, during the football season, during the football games, you might want to double your prices, because you will find a customer regardless of the price, because it is a special occasion, right? Graduation, for example, it is a special occasion. For 2 weeks or a week, it's a special occasion, and then parents of the graduating seniors are going to pay the price, because again, it's a special occasion, they don't want to miss out, and so on and so forth. Let me just talk about this again. Psychological factors sometimes works. Higher price. In those type of psychological factors, in those type of situations, a great idea to put that to at least capture more revenues for the specific month or a time period. So guys, these were the qualitative factors, and then we're going to jump to quantitative factors right now. We're going to jump to qualitative factors right now. Let's just talk about how does it work, what are those, what are they, what do I mean by saying quantitative factors, and then we're going to jump to the details, starting with the price elasticity of demand. Okay, guys. Quantitative factors, without the book definition, in layman terms, it is the tools. They are the tools and approaches that deals with numerical measurement, okay? Such as forecasting, such as trying to find the equivalent room capacity when you give discount, okay? Such as the prediction of ADR based on the local market, okay? Well, we have several approaches in quantitative approaches, okay? And each approach, as I said over here, serves a different purpose. For example, we're going to start with the price elasticity of demand right here, guys, okay? price elasticity of demand, ED in short. I might use notations from now on, so please be aware of the notations right here, okay? So I might be using them in my lecture. So ED, okay, price elasticity of demand, serves a purpose of measuring a demand to your property. Also, it measures how elastic your product is, meaning how consumers respond to your product pricing and how they are reacting if you change any price in terms of price and demand, okay? So we are going to measure all these by laying out the qualitative factors, quantitative factors, and of course the equation, and we are going to talk about all these right now, okay? So let me just clear this real quick, and then I will define ED first, then I will show you a couple of examples about that, guys. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you have any quiz due in the next class session, please, or next, this week, sometime this week, please make sure that you're staying on top of every single deadline. If you have any questions, you can always reach me using my email on web courses. So please make sure that you are on the right track. Okay. So guys, price elasticity of demand, as I told you guys, that it is a measurement or the situation or the relationship between degrees of changes in demand and the changes in the product pricing, the prices of the products. Okay, so if you change a product, how do your customers respond to it? Okay, price elasticity of demand answers that question. Okay, and then supports the answer and gives you a clue about how your demand looks like. Okay, based on the changing prices. Okay, for example, if you increase your price by 10%, do you realize a higher increase or lower increase? Usually lower decrease, by the way. Sorry, the decrease in your occupancy, but how low? Okay, and is that decrease okay? Can you deal with it? Can you be okay with it? Do you realize higher profit? We are going to do all these with the price elasticity of demand. So sensitivity is the issue here, how sensitive your customers are given the specific prices that you as a decision maker put to your products, okay? Guys, this is a common economic law. We are not talking about economics over here, but this is a common economic law, and we will have to follow some certain rules over here. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I just want to make sure about something. Okay. So guys, as I said, it is a common economic law. Okay, and it will tell you what we have been talking about, all right? So we're going to talk about this common economic law. I'm going to get back to this because we have 3 different rules of thumb to discuss. I'm going to get back to this section right here. Please hold on to it, but let me just introduce you the main equation that we're going to utilize for the price elasticity of demand, and then I'm going to get back to this common economic law, and everything will be clear after that, okay? And then we're going to jump to the examples, so everything will be clear after that. So guys, the main equation is right here, okay? Use different. Okay. Delta QD over QO over delta PD over PO. Guys, this is the main equation, and as you know, the deltas over here represent the change, okay? Therefore, as you can see over here, QD becomes the quantity demanded. Therefore, delta QD shows the change in quantity demanded for the number of units sold, rooms for example, during the current period when compared to the prior period, okay? I can expand delta QD as how you see it over here, current quantity, CQ, minus the quantity in the prior period, QP, okay? So I can expand this guy, this little guy right here, therefore delta QD will be equal to current quantity minus quantity in prior period, okay? Oh, and let me just stay right here. QO represents the quantity demanded in prior period. Let me just put it here, sorry. QO represents the quantity demanded in the prior period by itself. Therefore, there is no change over here. As you can see, delta PD, we have to do something over here, and we can expand delta PD, right? I will show you right now how we expand delta PD, but let me just clear this, and then I will have to flip the page. Delta PD right here, guys, okay, delta PD demonstrates the change in price of the product in the current period when compared to the prior period. Therefore, take a look at this over here. Current price, CP minus PP, price in prior period, becomes the delta PD. So I can expand delta PD, this guy, just like this, and then we will find the change in the price, just like we discussed the change in quantity demanded. So please make sure you understand these two equations in ED equation, because we are going to utilize these two expansions in the main equation in the example in a second, okay? And of course, the last one was the PO. Let me just clear this so you can see better. The last item in our ED equation was the PO, and PO, let me just highlight it, PO represents the price of the product in the prior period. Okay, guys? So I'm gonna go back to this. Let me just clean it right now. I might need to write it again for your better understanding, but let me just clear it right now so you can see where we are going and everything. Okay, so all right, guys, so couple of things I would like to mention. Let me just use this. A couple of things I would like to mention before I show the rules of thumbs of the ED. When analyzing the price elasticity is ED, guys, we know that, okay? When analyzing the price elasticity, we always deal with the absolute values, meaning sometimes ED equation, delta QD, okay, over delta PD over PD, okay? This QP, sorry, right here, okay, P values. So this equation sometimes produces negative numbers. But we cannot interpret negative numbers. It produces negative numbers because of that mathematical procedure. But we don't care about the negative number. We care about the interpretation of that number. Therefore, we will have to use the absolute value of that negative number, which means, you know, we will have to think about it as the positive value, because as you know, guys, any negative value in any negative number in an absolute value, it will be just 1 over here as a positive number, or let's say, I'm sorry, hang on, or just let's say absolute value of -5 will be 5. So we'll be dealing with the positive numbers over here. That's why, the reason why is that we have to, the interpretation is way important for us than just the mathematical outcome, okay? Guys, so take a look at over here. This is the assumption. This is the first rule that we're gonna follow, and then there are some inner rules of thumbs for interpretation purposes, and they are very, very important. Right here, take a look. If the price elasticity of demand exceeds an absolute value of 1. Okay? If the price elasticity of demand exceeds the absolute value of 1, the demand is said to be price elastic or elastic demand. So we have an elastic demand over here. So what does that mean, guys? Elastic. Think about a rubber band, right? If it is elastic rubber band, you can stretch it, right? Meaning for our case, meaning demand is sensitive to price changes. If you lower the price or increase the price, the quantity demanded, which is the occupancy percentage over here, let me just use my hands to show you. So we have an elastic demand over here, which means demand is sensitive, which means if you increase the price or decrease the price, quantity demanded, this side, quantity demanded, which is the occupancy percentage in our case, will be higher than or lower than the price changes, meaning if you increase the price by 10%, for example, hypothetical numbers I'm using, by 10%, the lower the quantity demanded, which is the occupancy percentage, will go down or might go down by 15 or 20%, okay? So that's how sensitive it is. There's a lot of fluctuations over here, and therefore in this scenario, it might not make you realize higher profits and vice versa, okay? Therefore, the revenues will decrease. In general, revenues will decrease just because of that sensitivity, okay? But there is another case, there is an opposite case that we can talk about right now. Therefore, let me just clear this and I will show you. And the opposite case is that if price elasticity of demand, ED, is less than the absolute value of 1, we have inelastic demand. Okay, guys? Meaning the change in your product pricing, okay, 10% increase. Let's use the same example. 10% increase in your price is not going to hurt you much, but maybe you will realize a lower decrease, for example, by 2%, by 3% in the quantity demanded. Inelastic, it doesn't stretch much. Think about the rubber band. It doesn't stretch much, okay? So 10% increase in the price is going to maybe lower occupancy percentage by 2 or 3%, maybe 5%, okay? Not like 15, 20%. That is exactly why the demand is not sensitive to price changes, okay? Customers are still willing to buy your product. Revenue margins often increase despite some of the quantity demanded, but overall in this scenario right here, revenues and profits realized will be higher than how it was before. Okay, guys? So therefore, in that case, as a decision maker, when you're analyzing your demand as a decision maker, you would like to have inelastic demand to your products. Therefore, product pricing, the changes in the product pricing is not going to hurt demand too much, and you will maintain the revenue levels, profit levels, at least at the same level, or you will be able to put on top of it, and then you will realize higher profits, okay? Okay, curving up, sorry. Okay, let me just talk about this too. The last thing, it's very rare, but the last thing is if your ED is exactly equal to absolute value of 1, you have unit elastic demand over here, but again, it is so rare. That means you're indifferent between setting the price or not. If you modify the price, it will not affect the revenues too much. You don't change prices too much. That is why it is so rare, okay? And these are 3, number 1 right here, number 2 right here, number 3 right here. These are the 3 rules of thumb of price elasticity of demand. Okay, guys? Now, I'm going to show you guys an example. Let me just clean. The screen first. Okay, we're going to talk about the curving restaurant example right here. Let me just read the question, okay? And then we can understand the question, and then we will solve the question. Remember, we talked about 4 steps. analyze or understand what we are solving for. Pick the right equation to do the final solution, to do the solution. Analyze the components of the equation and then run the equation to find the final answer. Curving Restaurant sold 3,400 plates of New York steak last month. Cool. The price of each plate was $25. Great. Last month, LM, 3,400 plates and each $25 steak, which is my favorite. During the current month, the management wants to increase the price of each New York steak plate to $32. CM current month to $32, 25 to 32. Okay. However, they have estimated that the demand for the steak will decrease to 3,000 plates. This is their estimations. Given this data, the management is curious. Okay. If the price elasticity of if there is a price elasticity of demand for New York steak, okay? If there is one, what kind? Elastic or inelastic? That's what we're going to do right now. Again, what we are solving for? We are solving for if we have price elasticity or inelasticity for this situation, right? Step number two, do we have the equation for this? Yes, we do. Step number 3, let's analyze the component of the equation. Let's do it right here. I will get back to the top part. Just bear with me. So this is the main equation we have. Okay. Do we know what delta QD is? Is it given in the question directly? No. We don't know this guy. Okay. Can we find it by given the information we have? Yes, we can. But we don't have it. We don't know it yet. Do we know what QO is? Yes, we do. Check mark over here. Do we know what PO is? Yes, we do. Check mark over here. Do we know what delta PD is? We don't. Therefore, all we have to do, we are going to find these two guys before, okay? And then we're going to get to the final point. This is my final point over here, because once I will be able to plug in the numbers for each component of the equation, I will be able to run the equation and find the final solution, and then I will be able to make a great interpretation. Guys, let's go on top, okay? As you know, delta QD is equal to current quantity minus quantity in prior period. Do we have the current quantity right now, guys? What is it? Think about it for a second. Let me give you a hint. We do have the current quantity, okay? Our current quantity is 3,000 because we are in the current month, okay? Therefore, 3,000 will be our current quantity because 3,400 is the last month's quantity, okay? Therefore, my delta Q, let me just go up. Delta QD, I'm going to follow this equation right here, will be equal to 3,000 minus 3,400, which is equal to negative 400, okay? Great, delta QD. Do I know? I don't. So I know those guys right there, right now, okay? I don't know what delta PD is, but delta PD is equal to, take a look, current price minus price in prior period. Current price, this guy. Price in prior period, this guy. So $32 minus $25, which is equal to $7, okay? So check mark. All I have to do, guys, I'm going to plug in the numbers over here as negative 400 over 3,400 over 7 over 2,500, $25, I'm sorry, okay? Please do these divisions first, separately, and then do the final division, do the main division, okay? I can simplify the equation, so the top part, this part produces negative 0.12, this part right here produces 0.28. When I do the division, it will be equal to negative 0.43. Absolute values, it will be equal to 0.43. Guys, here's the thing, okay, 0.43, great number. What is that then? What is it, okay? We will be able to interpret that number because 0.43 by itself doesn't make sense at all, doesn't serve our purpose, because we would like to understand the elasticity or inelasticity of our product. Okay, guys, clearly you can see that 0.43 is less than the absolute value of 1. Therefore, we have the price inelasticity. Okay, guys? Take a look at my interpretation right here. This is a great interpretation that everybody should understand and should be able to do this. The price elasticity of a New York steak is 0.43 when its price increases from $25 to $32. We know that. That is, a % increase in New York steak price will result in 0.43 decrease in demand. So I can increase 1% of the price demand, okay? The demand will be lower than the price increase. 1% increase right here versus 0.43%, okay? The difference becomes the extra additional revenues and therefore the profits that you will have, okay? Just because of having the price inelasticity, which means your customers are still willing to pay even though there's a 1% increase in the price. So you should be able to understand this. Please understand the EED equations just like this, because it is very important to understand your customer needs and customers' willingness to pay how much to a specific product, okay?